Hello guys and welcome back to another episode of Paint by Minis. As always, my name's Adam, and today we're continuing the Homebrew Space Marine chapter series and we're on episode 2. Now in the previous episode we spoke about tips on how to make your own Homebrew Space Marine, and in today's episode we're starting on my own personal Homebrew Space Marine chapter. Now I posted a video probably about 3 or 4 months ago, I'm sorry it's been so long, but in case you didn't catch it, I was just asking for some help on what to name the chapter. Now the only prompt I gave was that it was a Loyalist Imperial Fist successor chapter, and I just let everyone go wild. There were some really awesome suggestions in there, so thank you everyone on Reddit and on the YouTube video who commented. Now the name that I ended up going with was from this awesome person on YouTube called Nautic111, thank you so much, and the name is The Ashes of Dorn. Now this really fit thematically with what I was going for with this chapter, and it really got my juices flowing in the old noggin. It was coming up with really cool lore behind the chapter, and we'll go through that more as the videos progress, but I thought I'd just get that out of the way so I can stop saying Homebrew Space Marine chapter and start saying The Ashes of Dorn. So this is video number 2 as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, and this video we're going to go into the conversion process that I did on the Ashes of Dorn. So let's jump onto the bench and I'll show you what I did and give you some tips along the way of how I converted the Marines if you want to follow along. So the conversion process for me started with the idea that these Marines will be a lot more tactical and a lot more advanced than the standard Primaris Marines. So when I found the Infiltrators kit, this was a perfect match for the idea that I had in my head. Though I wasn't a fan of the leg section of the model. I think they look fine for the Infiltrators, but for a standard troop they needed to be a bit more bulky, so I ended up choosing the regular legs of the Intercessor squad. Now another aspect of the Infiltrators that I really liked wasn't just the tactical nature of them, but I also liked that they were much more stripped down. They don't have much adornment and they don't even have a chest eagle. I also liked the fact that they were asymmetrical. They've got one shoulder pad and the other is missing. Now to double down on this and really push the asymmetry of the model, I decided to make the one shoulder pad bigger. So I had a look online and I found that Assault Marines have the perfect shoulder that I was after. So now that I've sourced all the models that I want to use for the conversion, it's time to get going. So the main part of the conversion I'm doing here is basically just the leg swap between the Intercessors and the Interceptors. So the first step of that is just consulting the instructions and trying to pick the best fit between the leg pose and the body pose of the two kits. Once that's done, it's just a case of clipping the parts out per the instructions. So now all I've done here is fully assemble the legs of the Intercessor and the body portion of the Interceptor. Now here's something that really gets on my nerves. These modern Games Workshop kits, especially the Space Marine range, seem to be obsessed with modelling parts of the body and the legs together. Gone are the days of the old kits where the torso and legs were two completely separate entities. Now you get this awkward mix of half torso on groin area. It's really terrible for situations like this where you're trying to kit bash two different kits together, because there's just no way to connect them intuitively. I completely get where they're going for. It's trying to be newer, modeler friendly, where the parts only really connect in one way, so there's no way you can mess it up, and for that reason I completely agree with it. But on the flip side of that, it's discouraging creativity because there's only one way to assemble, so you don't even stop to think, could I do something different with this? And I think that is a real shame because converting is a huge part of the hobby. Anyway, enough rambling, let's move on. For this next step you want to make sure that the two halves of the model that you've got are completely dried, and then we're going to start removing the torso section from the legs. This is the part of the Intercessor that we don't want. Ideally you would have a hobby saw to do this, but I don't have it and I'm unfortunately too cheap to buy it, so instead I'm going to use a combination of clippers and a hobby knife just to really work away the material that we don't want. And this is about where I've got to. I've left the belt detail intact because we want to retain that, because we're actually going to remove that from the Infiltrator's torso, so don't need two belts, so we'll leave this one intact. And now it's just a case of getting the remaining area nice and flat so it's easy for the two parts to join. To do this I'm just going to use a bit of fine grit sandpaper, nothing too coarse, we don't want to remove loads of material, we just want to make sure that it's a nice smooth level surface. So So with the sanding done, the intercessor legs are all prepped and we're ready to move on to the infiltrator's torso. So for this we're actually taking away the little groin bit that comes added with the torso of the infiltrator, and we're also going to remove the belt area because we've already got a belt attached to the legs. So same process as the legs really. I'm just going to use the clippers to take away the bulk of the material, then use a combination of the hobby knife and sandpaper to make sure it's a nice level surface. When you're doing the sanding, to make sure that they're nice and level, a good trick is just to lay a bit flat on the worktop and then gently run the part of the model that you want flat over the top. That way you're guaranteed to have a nice level surface. So now all the prep on the torso and legs has finished, we're ready to join them together. And to do this, I'm going to use plastic putty. The reason for this is that it gives the same join strength as plastic glue, but it's just a bit thicker. So if you do have gaps between the parts, it's not that big of a deal because this will fill them in. So all I do is squeeze a little bit on either the torso or the legs and then just work them together until you're satisfied. If you do get any extra that you don't want, just wipe it off onto a scrap bit of paper. Now that the torso and legs are all joined together, the majority of work that we need to do is pretty much done. But there are a few bits left to do for the conversion, and the first one of those is removing this chest icon. For the Ashes of Dorn, I prefer a completely bare chest. I know it sounds funny, but we will add some details back to it later, but for now we're going to remove this iconography. For this I'm just using my hobby knife and then sanding it smooth. So now we've got a lovely bare chest, we are now moving on to the last conversion, which is the bolter. Now for these models I'm using the standard bolter that comes with the infiltrator kit, and I'm just removing the scope from the magazine part. Luckily for this, the kit comes with a very easily removable scope. Just take some clippers and clip it right off. So with that step done, all of the conversion process is now complete. So I went ahead and just assembled the rest of the model. The other parts don't have any conversions done to them, they're just parts that I've plucked from either the intercessor kit or the infiltrator kit. A good tip here is that if your seam join between the torso and the legs is quite messy, like mine turned out to be, don't sweat it, you can just add some pouches and grenades all around the torso and you'll completely hide the mess. So hopefully this has been a useful tutorial. If you're looking to convert your very own Ashes of Dorn models, stay tuned because next episode we're going to be showing off the paint scheme for these guys and also going into a little bit more of the lore. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you again next time.